started. There. Well, good afternoon, everybody, and thanks for joining us for this session of Net Zero Week. But before I go into the introductions, I just wanted to talk about what the brief was for this afternoon's seminar. Hey, let's not call it a seminar. Let's be a little bit more laid back. Let's have an industry chat. I think that's more what we're after. So the brief that we got was government has ambitious targets to decarbonise our homes by 2050. But how will that be achieved? Do we have the consumer buy-in to retrofit 22 million domestic buildings? Do we have the necessary supply chain and, critically, an installer base ready to retrain and upskill to fit the low carbon technologies? That's an interesting brief, I think. So let's start with some introductions. I'm Stuart Clements, Director with the Heating and Hot Water Industry Council. I'll hand over to Mark Wilkins. Mark, just who are you? What do you do?
Good afternoon, everybody. I'm Mark Wilkins, Technology and Training Director with Valent in the UK and Ireland. I've been around the industry for about 42 years now. Started as an apprentice gas service engineer with British Gas. Various positions before moving into manufacturing in the mid-1990s, and I now have four key areas of responsibility, one being the product portfolio and lifecycle management, one being government relations and external affairs, one being customer training, and one being all things sustainability within our organisation.
Thanks, Mark. Andy.
Hi, thanks, Stuart. I'm Andy Farquhar, Senior Product Manager for Ideal Heating, actually Group Atlantic in the UK and Ireland. And my role looks after the roadmap for heat pumps, heat pump hot water cylinders, heat pump controls through our division and at Ideal Heating. So that's me.
Thanks very much, Andy. Jeff.
Yeah, hi everyone, good afternoon. My name's Jeff House. I'm Director of External Affairs and Policy at Baxi Heating. Known in the UK as Baxi. As you'll see from my background, we're part of BDR Thermea at global level. I've been in the industry for knocking on 29 years now, 24 years with Baxi, so man and boy and all that good stuff. So my current role is all about policy and regulation, so what's coming down the track, how do we adapt the business, how do we build maps, and importantly, dealing with stakeholders across industry and government to share our views and help to shape. So we've got pretty extensive background and an interest in all the discussion points today.
Excellent, thanks everybody. So that's a number of years of experience around the virtual table, isn't it? One of the questions that I get asked most of all is, so who are the Heating and Hot Water Industry Council, HHIC to use that acronym? Well, we're the trade body for the heating industry. Our membership, it's representative of the overall supply chain in the UK. Various shapes and sizes of membership, but they include heating appliance manufacturers, control manufacturers, water treatment, radiators and cylinder manufacturers, with some of the largest heating and plumbing merchants in the land as well. But we also have test houses such as Kiwa and BSI. We also have bodies such as the CIPHE, the Chartered Institute of Plumbing and Heating Engineers, or SNPF, the Scottish and Northern Irish Plumbing Federation. We also do an awful lot of collaboration with other trade associations, and that's really important to point out that we work collectively as the industry pushing forward. We've recently been working with MCS to include benchmark on part of that process and part of that journey. That's been a great thing for industry to collectively do. And recently, with other heat pump associations in the sector, we've got the acceptance of hybrids within MCS. So again, it just shows you the power of collaboration. The membership, well, it's always been at the forefront of innovation. But importantly, members have been playing and are playing their part of hitting net zero. But we also fully understand the difficult pathway that we need to negotiate to achieve the results. it's important to mention that as an industry, if we are to achieve the government 600,000 target of heat pumps by 2025, and as an industry, we're looking to achieve that and actually surpass it. That's something that we want to do. But that still leaves in the region of 1 million gas boilers still being installed. So we think there's an awful lot more that could be done with the incumbent stock and existing boilers that are going in. Let's look at the systems. Let's see what extra work we can do there to future-proof them. Should the systems be able to run at 55 degrees? Good question. So the supply chain is in place, as we're here to represent it. But I think it's how do we step up as industry and engage, as we are doing, but can we accelerate this process? So an opening question to the panel. Let's get into the weeds. We've now got a brand new government and a Prime Minister with Keir Starmer. If you're sitting around a table with the new cabinet ministers, what would be your asks in the first 100 days to assist with the transition to net zero? Can I start with you, Mark, on that one?
Yeah, I think the first 72 hours of government was quite action packed and promises a lot. We've seen sort of the planning reforms announced, the rolling back on onshore wind, so that's positive for clean energy. I would broadly group my asks into sort of three areas. The first would be support for businesses and the green supply chain. That would include increasing powers for sort of local or devolved administrations, regional government, and expanding the definitions for green investment zones. At the moment, that focuses on manufacturing, but we need to sort of have the warehousing capability and supply chain around that as well. Looking to expand VAT across the future-proofing part of heating systems so that we incentivise early action to sort of go towards a heat pump, if not installing a heat pump with zero rate VAT. Support for homeowners, including things such as closing the differential in gas and electricity cost. There was rumoured to be a consultation on the previous Secretary of State's desk on that one. So we'd like to see that issued and sort of really embrace in the debate. Looking at ways to expand green finance and the like. And the third area will be support for installers. So that's helping installers and their businesses to sort of upskill and move into the heat pump world, including a reformation of the apprenticeship levy to encourage more people coming in. So not much, 100 days, few challenges there.
Yeah, thanks, Mark. Andy, what would be your asks? I'm sure there'll be a few.
Yeah, I feel like Mark, you've nicked all of the top three there, mate. So I don't know, Jeff, you're going to be struggling to not repeat us. So I think for me, there's a number of reasons why we've adopted stuff in the UK. I think if we're really honest, the reason why we currently all have combi boilers is because combi boilers are relatively easy to install, relatively cheap, and it's a known technology. I think the benefit of heat pumps is there's also a known technology, just not inside the UK. But making it, giving a real assurance through, and just jumping on the back of what Mark said in regards to the difference in electricity costs versus gas costs, I think ensuring to our homeowners that when they buy a heat pump, it is going to be efficient and it isn't going to cost them any more money to run, I think is a really important thing, because actually incentives are really good, but incentives always, they amplify maybe what isn't completely there. And I would really love it for heat pumps to be, because I think they are, and I think they can be. And even though we are known to be a gas boiler company, we also sell a lot of heat pumps in Europe, and that's because they make a lot of sense. And so for me, taking some of the taxes off electricity and bringing it more in line with the cost of gas, at least in a bit closer, combined with the efficiency that us as manufacturers are putting into the products, gives our customers and consumers a really good case for taking our heat pumps, and I would say that's probably the most important thing, because while actually at the moment heat pumps don't really cost any much more than gas to run, there's still that real risk that consumers, I think, feel, and so readjusting the costs of energy would be really good to reducing that risk. And then on top of that, I think a straight bet on targets would be really good, so that we as manufacturers know where to innovate and where to continue to invest. Is really good. We spent, HHIC and the members of HHIC spent millions and millions and millions on investment in manufacturing and R&D, and just understanding where we're going and playing a real straight bet on targets. I think it'd be really useful for all of us as we put our business plans together. One of the things that they do in Europe and around the world is often there's a lot of investment goes into local manufacturing, and we Ideal have committed to that, as a number of people in HHIC have. But I'd really love if there were some opportunities the government, or at least they continue to put in, to enable and really incentivize manufacturing in the UK, which will only help to make better products, which will make the transition to low carbon technology even better in the future. So those would be my top lists.
Yeah, so that final one, equally, they're all great. As for the final one's extremely important, isn't it? For sure. Jeff?
The benefit of going last is everyone's already said it, but if we're looking at first 100-day stuff, these real quick, easy wins. We responded to an inordinate amount of consultations earlier this year and late last year. So we're still awaiting government responses on some of these things and clarity. So future homes and future building standards is one. So there's confirmation that it's actually happening, it's coming through, what the response is, what the timeframes are, and the transitional arrangements and leading periods around that will be pretty key. I've got to mention Spark Gap again. Everyone said it. That is the key one. So we know that DESNZ were poised to consult on the matter, and we did a white paper on this exact issue a couple of years back, looking at distribution of policy costs between gas and electricity, and the need to bring that Spark Gap down to make low carbon heat much more affordable. So we're in a situation today where there are some heat pump tariffs out there. There are a few loss leader sort of headline grabbing things, but we need long-term certainty for our customers on running costs and whole life costs for product, and that can really only come through regulatory intervention. Looking at the future stuff, I know there's a question coming, but longer term is, I think, where we'll see perhaps more intervention. So first 100 days, there's a lot of other things for the incoming government to worry about, but heat isn't necessarily in that basket of first 100 days to a great extent.
Thanks, Jeff. Yeah, just for information, what is the current Spark Gap? Is anybody familiar with that?
Yeah, under the current price cap from Ofgem, it's 4.08. So electricity at 22.36 pence per kilowatt hour, and gas at 5.48. So we're seeing heat pumps in the field, air source heat pumps. This is obviously looking at mass market here. Heat pumps in the field achieving SCOPs in the region of 3. Till we see that Spark Gap lower than the SCOP, we need to be able to demonstrate to bring these things to the mass market to properly get takeoff. We need to show that low carbon heat is the lowest cost over its life cycle, and rather than doing this, continual look to all and say, look, this is the cheapest way of doing it. We need to flip that paradigm.
Yeah.
Just aware there may be some on the call that aren't necessarily technical or fully engaged in the industry. So just to pick up on that one, SCOP is the seasonal coefficient of performance, or effectively the annual efficiency of the heat pump. And the key here to get the running cost in favour of a heat pump is to have the Spark Gap, gas electricity price differential, lower than the SCOP. So that then means that the unit is running more efficiently than the gas boiler. Sorry, more cost effectively than the gas boiler would be.
Thank you.
Thanks. Well, thanks for that clarification. We're a bit like that when we get into industry. We assume too much sometimes, don't we? We do. So just based on the last question, really, and Jeff alluded to earlier, and what more long term? What about in the next 5 years? So at the end of this term, what would you like to see that we've achieved as a country? And again, Mark, if I can start with you.
Crystal ball gazing is always very, very difficult. They say a week is a long time in politics, and a parliamentary term is infinity. For me, we need stable policy long term. We need a clear direction long term. And I'm not opening the Brexit debate or anything, but an alignment with the EU, because as we diverge on product standards, we're sort of inventing the left-hand drive, right-hand drive car debate, and we risk putting our costs up because we are unique. We don't get the scale of manufacture which we have seen across Europe with alignment within the EU.
Okay. Well, that's absolutely superb point. Absolutely. Andy.
Yeah, I'm going to say the same thing. Policy for us is really key. I guess there's two things on policy. One is policy to ensure that we are of the energy transition and how the government deems that and the pace at which they want to carry that out, I think is really important. Because all of us here are here, and I guess across the HHIC are here because we really believe the transition is important and we really want to. And a lot of us have put our money where our mouths are, despite what the press might say. The HHIC is for this transition and we're all ready for it and are currently doing it. But I think a stable policy would be so good, and we're hoping that will come. I guess the other key thing on policy is on more the technical detail and what Mark kind of said earlier in regards to aligning with the EU. On whether it's electronic safety and making sure that the way all our appliances speak to one another and to potentially the DNO, making sure that is aligned, as well as the performance requirements we need from products, acoustic requirements and efficiency requirements, because to innovate takes ages. And I think for us, having really clear understanding and ensuring industry are part of that conversation is really good. And I think the alignment with the EU is really important because in the global markets, if we want products that are really suitable for the EU and for the UK, actually aligning with the EU gives us a really good consumer base, which enables us to drive that, those products which are really good for our region. And I think, and also compete with other regions around the world. So I think policy, both technical policy and real consistency there, as well as the bigger energy generation and low carbon targets would be great.
Yeah, thanks. And Jeff, long term.
Sure. So you already mentioned in the lead up, there's this ambition for 600,000 heat pumps a year by 2028. There's an interesting bit of research or recommendation from Nesta, which came out this week saying, look, 1 in 10 households need to fit a heat pump in order for this government to meet carbon, the current carbon budget. So I think our big ask is, in the longer term, is a more considered and joined up approach. So we've got effectively lots of disparate pockets of subsidy and support, but no real joined up big picture thinking here. So there's some big gaps in particular, and there's a lot of emphasis put on the boiler upgrade scheme. That's going to deliver a fraction of that 600,000. And to be frank, the policy framework as it stands today will not deliver 600,000 heat pumps per year. So that's where some real work is needed.
Yeah, thanks for that. Very interesting. Next question, though, is a lot of talk about the transition, and one of the transitional product is the hybrid. That's a heat pump with an air to water heat pump with a fossil fuel boiler. You alluded to what's going on in Europe a little bit, Andy, but we do know that they're being installed. Hybrids are being installed en masse in Europe. Well, could this be replicated in the United Kingdom, and how do we make that happen? How do we make the installations of hybrid a reality? Because they're frowned upon sometimes.
Yeah, that's a really good question, Stuart. And we've seen heat pumps and boilers work really well in Europe. And that's either because the grid infrastructure of the electrical grid, which can't quite carry EVs, PV, and heat pumps as well. And as we're upgrading the grid and that long-term kind of 10-year plan, hybrids are a really good way of offsetting some of that demand, especially when they're linked into a bigger management system. I guess the key thing is the adoption of heat pumps and low carbon technology has been incentivized in the UK, and that's caused adoption and created a market. I think if we want hybrids to be included, we have to include that. And we see it slightly in the eco funding, where we've started to see an increase in adoption of hybrids because the eco funding, Eco4 has opened up to hybrids, which is, I think, a really good thing. But I think what the big risk that people have is uncontrollable. But I think we can learn from our European counterparts that actually on mass market, it can be controllable. And HHIC are joined with other organisations, like you say, to make sure that the technical installation framework and training and guidance around installation of hybrids is there for people to go to and draw on in the best way of installing that. So I think for me, it's enabling hybrids or opening the current incentive schemes to cover hybrids would be a really good way of encouraging adoption.
Thanks, Andy. Mark, hybrids?
Nothing really to add. Andy sort of summed it up there. We do see in Scotland that hybrids have been recognised, and there's been a little bit of reluctance, I think, to embrace hybrids in the past from the powers that be, because of the fear that, well, you know, it's a gas boiler route by a different name. What we see in Europe is not true. It's definitely one technology supporting the other, supporting the grid, because it sort of offsets the load. So Andy's touched on the point, recognising the funding and sort of financial side of things, inclusion, training standards, and the definition.
Yeah. Jeff, I guess you've got similar views.
Exactly the same. I've got in front of me here. So supporting policy underlined in red. So effectively, we need to move away from, you know, a single solution mindset. You know, we're going to have a technical solution to suit all of the housing stock and all the different challenges that we have. You know, there's already been previous policy documents and political speeches that allude to that fact as well. So having a hybrid option on the table that is scalable, that is available to consumers, is going to be a good thing. So other member states in Europe have already recognised this and fully support the rollout. And we've seen, you know, significant numbers, especially in Netherlands, where our head office is, you know, to a burgeoning market for hybrid. Mainly because you don't necessarily need a hot water cylinder, and that's one of the key barriers in our housing stock today. There's a lot of combis out there. So coupling a small heat pump with a small combi boiler, or even the existing combi boiler, resolves one of those space-related issues, but still offers very, very strong decarbonisation and a route to a full electrification in the future if needed. So, yeah, there's real, you know, proper inclusion in the support schemes, and this proper recognition that it's a technology group that can really help with unlocking a few more difficult to treat properties.
Yeah, interesting. Yeah. Do we have a handle on how many hybrids are being sold in the UK currently? Is there a feeling?
Fewer than 1,000, I'd suggest.
Yeah. It's really hard because at the moment we know when heat pumps get sold and we know when boilers get sold, and there's not a lot that tracks the combination of those. So we don't. I guess just to add to the hybrid conversation, one of the things we all said was a big issue that people have with adopting heat pumps is the potential cost and that gap between gas and electricity. I guess a hybrid system also helps de-risk that conversation until those taxes are adjusted, because you do have the option of running gas instead of electric. Well, that's limited and will be limited on installation. There is still that option to be able to do that. So if the price of gas plummets and the price of electricity goes through the roof, as we've seen, then it doesn't put everyone into fuel poverty. And I think that's an important thing to add.
Yeah, no, good point to that.
Sorry, Stuart, just very quickly to add to that as well. Mark touched on this already, but hybrid system connected to a smart meter, it does offer local resilience and flexibility. So in the issue that the local electricity grid is seeing constraint problem, can instruct the product to switch the fuel source or to favour a fuel source. So it's got wider benefits than just the home.
Yeah, so there's a good case.
We need to start talking about boilers.
Yeah, we do. I want to sort of move on and talk a little bit about training and what's required. There's a number of reports out there that you can lay your hands on that suggest that we need anywhere between 30,000 and 140,000 engineers to hit the 600,000 heat pump target. What are we going to be able to do that? Are we going to have the ability to train that amount of installers? Do you think there's enough appetite with the existing 130,000 gas safe registered engineers out there to make that switch? We know that some are, absolutely. Yeah, is there appetite? Are you able to train that amount of installers as individual businesses? Mark, can I start with you, because that's kind of in your work, isn't it?
This is an industry chat, webinar, seminar of its own right. We could fill the day, let alone the hour on this subject alone. 30,000 and 140,000 in my view are pretty much one and the same thing. If you do the maths, the pure maths from the average time of installation for a heat pump by the 600,000 heat pumps that we are targeted to install from 2028, you need circa 30,000 full-time equivalent installers. By the time you allow for the fact that some of those installers are going to be heating installers, some of them are going to be electricians. With a heat pump, you've got to put it on a stable base, so there could be a little bit of brick and block work that's needed as well. If you're into ground source, then you've got groundworks as well. So that 30,000 FTE very quickly scales up to over 100,000. I've used the term before, warm bodies that we have to train, people as opposed to FTE equivalents. So it's a massive task. You've got three manufacturers of heat pumps on the call today, all of whom have large training facilities, large investments in training. We are all capable of delivering reasonable numbers, and I think we're all up for our part of the challenge. There's any number of other training providers in the industry, so the capability, I think, is there, and we've got a few years yet to sort of it's an exponential growth in numbers. The key things would be, for me, making sure that we've got the correct standard of training and that the training is fit for purpose, that we have got a dynamic form of training and it's evolving with the developments in technology, that we move, and the previous government used this lifelong learning phrase. I think it's a brilliant phrase. It's a brilliant concept. The day you learn, you need to keep learning from there. So we need to move our industry into one of lifelong learning and continual professional development. So not just going in every few years and doing a course from an assessment point of view, going and doing a webinar like this every so often and picking up a few new facts and a few new pieces of information and keeping your skill set fresh. The other question that you asked within that, Stuart, is there a willingness for the installers to train? Now, there's 130,000 gas safe engineers or there or thereabouts. Not all of those are active in boiler installs today. Many of them are purely active in service or meter installation, or they could actually be lecturers and trainers, because all of the training teams have to be gas safe registered. So that 130,000 actually comes down to a smaller number than that. We've got an aging population in the workforce. Some people will want to retrain. Surveillance have done a survey recently that shows that there is a propensity to train from a proportion of the installer base. Equally, there's a group that don't want to train, and I've had those first-hand conversations. I just want a bucket of spares and I'll keep my boilers going forever. Well, that's fine. You know, we've got 27 million installed boilers or 24 million installed boilers out there. Somebody needs to service those and maintain them in a safe condition until such time as they are replaced by a heat pump. And that's not going to be 2030. That will be way into the next decade by the time we get through that side of it. So it doesn't matter that not everybody wants to train, that some do, and we've got that exponential growth. What is also important is that we get new blood into the industry. We've got a low carbon heating technician apprenticeship that was launched last year. We've got the plumbing and heating apprenticeship with the environmental module, both of which are great ways for young people to come into the industry. We need to encourage installer companies to take on apprentices, and that was where I started off about asking for the apprentice levy reform. And if we can find ways to support businesses to take on more, can't just say young people these days with apprentices, but more people in the industry. So I think, yes, we can do it. Yes, there is a willingness to do it. But as an industry and government need to work together to make it happen.
Thanks, Mark. concise answer there. How do we attract more people into our industry? Is there one simple solution? It's a multitude of things, I guess, but it's making the industry attractive, isn't it?
I would say no, there isn't one single thing to do. The industry itself is making itself attractive. If you think by the nature of what we're doing, if you talk to Gen Z, millennials, they are interested in the environment, in climate change. We're trying to solve that problem. They're interested in IoT and digital aspects. We've all got connected solutions. So there's a lot in there that would appeal to younger people. We need to get the message out to colleges. We need to get the message out to secondary schools. And we probably even need to get the message out to primary schools that this is a great and interesting career, well-paid jobs, and it is a career for life. I won't say job for life, but a career for life. So we've got to sort of drive that message across the education system.
Yeah. Thanks, Mark. And have you got some reviews? So different.
Yeah, I would echo everything Mark said. I think as manufacturers, all of us have shown for our investments before any government help, and now there's a really good government support for training as well. We're up for it. We want the challenge. I guess there's two areas that I think for me are the focus, and one is tracking back to the conversations and the questions we've had before. The reason we have so many gas installers because there's so much demand for gas installers, and I think as soon as we start to see demand from our neighbours, our next door neighbours, our mothers and fathers, are people around us, then I think that will create a demand, and that will cause training. And while we aren't known in the UK to be really good at forward thinking when it comes to planning and investing in tomorrow, we're quite reactive. But I think we'll start getting a lot more people who want to train when they're people who traditionally wanted gas boilers start asking for heat pumps instead. So number one is consumer requests. And I think that's, for me, the main thing. And that will drive adoption, and it will drive more people to get trained. It's really important to add to that is I've said this before, there's never been a better time to be a heat pump engineer, because there's a lot of demand, and therefore you can ask a really significant amount of money for installing heat pumps. And I think one of the long-term hopes is that installation cost does become more akin to normal gas boiler installation costs, because it's a good place to be. The last thing I would say on this is we ask our heat pump engineers to do a lot at the moment. That's from room by room assessments to understand the fabric heat loss of a property, the building structure, all the way through to understanding how to commission and install a heating system. And I just wonder if we had a bit more investment in our EPCs and our energy assessors, that actually we could do some of the hard yards for our gas and electricity trade, and actually let them do what they're good at, rather than have to also pick up the pieces of what is a fairly broken EPC system. And so I would really like to see reform of EPCs, or a way of our trades being able to go to a property and understand the heat requirements in a uniform way that everyone agrees with, that they can then approach with designing a really good heating and hot water system for.
Yeah, excellent. The EPC is a really good point, isn't it? Definitely. Jeff.
Sure. As usual, everything's been said until we get to me, but
sorry.
I'm glad you always last, Jeff.
Always been last. So I've got underlined in red text market forces. So Mark's alluded to the fact that the capacity in terms of training is here. We've recently opened our multi-million refurb training centre in Warwick. We have nationwide coverage, as do others. So is this chicken and egg thing? So as we start to see consumer demand pull through, the existing workforce that are perhaps working on other technologies might start to feel a bit more safe, if you like, to spend that money and that time on retraining. So it's critical to consider that if you're a jobbing installer fitting X amount of products per week and you've got a consistent work stream, taking that week off the road to retrain to get the relevant accreditations is not only a cost in terms of paying for the course in some instances, or there are subsidy streams available to help with that, but it's also the opportunity cost. You're losing a week's work, so there's a bit of work around that. We focused a lot on heat pump training. There's also heat network training, which we're involved in. So again, there's some government help towards cost in training to become, a competent heat network technician. And we touched on other products as well, so to hybrids, etc., and other product groups that we offer training on as well. So I think the story is that the capacity is here. It's just a case of shaping market demand and delivering that consumer pull through to actually make it all happen at any other sector of the industry.
Yeah. Stuart, can I just come back in on one point Jeff said there?
Please.
There is sometimes a reluctance to train. I don't have the demand. We hear this frequently. If I train somebody now and they don't use those skills regularly, they will lose those skills. Therefore, 100%. I've got to train them again in due course. And it's a duplication of cost and effort and duplication of lost opportunity costs. So it's that tipping point, I think, for the installer. And let's not forget, many of these are, or not even SMEs, many of these are sole traders. So there's a huge investment into training that they've got to put into to sort of upskill.
Yeah.
Thanks, Mark. Yeah.
One of the things we saw in France, Stuart, one of the things we saw in France and in Europe is when the government's willing to, when there's a really good apprenticeship scheme, then you start to get really good installers. And we know in Europe, a lot of our installers have only ever fitted heat pumps, even though there's really good gas boiler markets, because that's what they started out on and that's what they continue to do. And I think just to echo what Mark said, a really good apprenticeship scheme is really important for our industry and industry as a whole, I think.
Yeah, I totally agree with that comment. Absolutely. Just for the people involved or watching the webinar, can I encourage you to use the Q&A box if you can, and I'll try and tease some other questions out of this formidable panel. So this discussion was about the whole supply chain, and I'm curious to know what role the heating and plumbing merchants could be playing, and I'm sure a lot already are, but from your perspective, Jeff, go on.
Oh, I don't know this.
Yeah, merchants play a key role in the industry. So not only is it moving stock around and making sure that our products are where they need to be for the given jobs in hand. It's a socialising point, the trade counter. It's where you get a bit of information and industry gossip. People go there for a chat. They do training. They're great at signposting, where to go for more help with certain things. So I think it's time that we recognise that more fully for sure, and really get behind, as an industry, get behind sort of merchants' information provision, so they can, in a more structured way. So this is where you go to get more information on certification or training or whatever it might be, and we can help with that, or they can do their own schemes or whatever. But yeah, just to underline the point that they are at the moment still, very much a hub for socialising and having that cup of tea and seeing what's happening in the local area. So if we're talking hearts and minds, keeping up with the Joneses in terms of neighbours fitting heat pumps or whatever it might be, this is somewhere where that conversation will absolutely happen.
Mark,
yeah, that's absolutely, the merchant has a role to play. I was once told that the merchant system is so well established that you're probably closer to a merchant vehicle in any town than you would be an ambulance or a police car. There's a lot of them about, and they are moving goods around all the time. They have to adapt. I think it's no secret to say that merchants are looking at what they do at the moment, because moving a heat pump around the country is different to moving a pallet of boilers. So yeah, on that side of it, so I think that merchants absolutely have a role to play. But equally, I think we will see disruptors coming into the market. Not such a bad thing. Disruptors come and go. Disruptors do what the name says and disrupt the market. But it makes the established market challenge itself, reinvent itself, and drive for efficiency. So I can see sort of supply chains going through both routes, the established merchant and new evolving areas.
And finally, Andy, on that one.
Yeah, I echo what everyone says. I think one of the things that we've seen with gas boilers and hot water cylinders in the UK is that merchant, I guess by merchant we mean the trade shops where you go and you can buy your heat pumps and your copper pipe, for those who aren't as familiar with the model at the moment. And you get them in almost every town, village and city across the country. And they enable really close access to not only equipment, but also tools and parts and everything you need for your heating and hot water system and your electrical system and your every other thing you have in your house, probably that a trade person will fit. They also offer terms and they're able to leverage credit. So one of the things that we've seen in the gas boiler and the hot water cylinder market is there's a difference between when you as a consumer pay and when your installer, your plumber, your electrician pays for the equipment. And what merchants do is they enable 30 days so that the consumer can pay, and they then can pay the money that consumers has paid for the equipment. And just that ability, that time difference is really important for our industry, because whether it's a boiler or a heat pump or a hot water cylinder, actually can be substantial amounts of money. And often consumers, rightfully so, don't want to pay for that before it's been installed. And so just having a gap or a way of financing that and enabling that model has been really successful for the gas boiler and the hot water industry. And that's how it's really grown so well in the UK. And therefore, I would say we continue the same thing with heat pumps. The other really good thing about the merchant model, I think, is two things. One is a lot of the merchants are willing to help when it comes to advising what equipment to use, design of that equipment, help with maybe the skills gap. And the other thing is they're really good at putting really heavy equipment really close to our houses. And I think actually we're talking about something that's potentially 130, 120 kg, having the right people with the right lifting tools, put that in the right place, I think is really useful for not only heat pumps, but also for boilers and hot water cylinders.
Yeah. No, thanks for that. Three interesting answers, and merchants certainly do have that role to play, don't they? We've got a question come in, so a little nudge worked, and I knew it would come. Or mention of it. What would giving, it's from Richard King, would giving hybrids a full credit under the clean heat market mechanism, as opposed to half a credit, make a material difference in their viability success? Jeff, go on again, please.
Yes, absolutely. So for those that aren't aware on the call, the Clean Heat Market Mechanism is a proposed government policy which will effectively see manufacturers who sell gas boilers obliged to sell a volume of heat pumps or face financial penalties. So there's a real sort of holding the fire involved with it. So at the moment, hybrid heat pumps are recognised within the proposed policy, but would achieve half a credit, whereas a pure heat pump system would achieve a full credit. Absolutely higher credit under the scheme would help to really get hybrids going, and it would sharpen mind for sure in terms of how we put them into the market. And we've been arguing is a strong word. We've been putting the case forward to government for a while now that, look, half a credit doesn't recognise the benefit the hybrid system can bring. You know, we've got case studies from the continent where we can show an 80% CO2 reduction. So there's definitely I think a rationale to do something better than half.
Yeah, thanks, Jeff. Anything to add to that, Mark? Or
a little. The 80%, I think, should be the sort of the recognised figure. We see that from Europe again. I think there's a lot more that needs to be sorted out with Clean Heat Market Mechanism to make heat pumps or hybrids fly faster with that proposed piece of policy. I put words in Jeff and Andy's mouth, but I don't think anybody in the call is opposed to the Clean Heat Market Mechanism as such. It was the mechanism itself and the processes within how it would deliver that was the challenging part. We don't necessarily have the ways to record hybrid installations at the moment, so that's a fundamental that has to be addressed before you'd see any benefit of hybrids under clean heat market mechanism.
Yeah, thanks. Anything else, Andy, to that?
I think everyone has said it. I guess the question is how to incentivize hybrids, and should we? It's probably taking it one back, and I think we've probably said we should, and I don't think we need to be, and we've all said we don't need to be scared of them. And I think it's important to say that we are all significant heat pump manufacturers as well as boiler manufacturers, and that's where our experiences come from, selling the heat pump first, and then bring the boiler in as a hybrid. But I think that's probably the main question, is how to incentivize hybrids. As per the clean heat market mechanism. I think we've probably,
wait and see. I think we've always, HHIC, been innovators, and we are the heating industry. Collectively, we've grown a market to 1.6 million units on the gas boiler side. We want to see that. Do we want to see that diminish? We want to see additional heat pumps sold. We want to hit that 600 and surpass that 1,000 heat pump marker. But I was thinking back to where we did innovate as a country. The condensing boiler, for example, we were asked to fit it in a kitchen cupboard. We put it in a kitchen cupboard. They don't do that in Europe. We did it in the UK. So I'm curious to know, what innovations would we like to see for heat pumps in the UK? Could we get a heat pump in a kitchen cupboard? Yeah.
Maybe. So I think we're looking at innovation from a slightly different angle. So we think system integration and solutions provision is probably more where there's space to improve and to innovate. So, we offer multiple technologies across the board. We do a whole raft of different things. And it's a case of bringing them together into cohesive whole systems with that plug and play functionality. So it improves setup and commissioning times, it improves consumer outcomes from the get-go. And, all of this will be connected and digitally addressable as well. So we can do remote diagnostics and some smart stuff over the web, which will be, game changer is a strong phrase, but, when you're geeky and sort of close to the coalface as I am, I see it as a game changer. So I guess getting the right kit for the job and integrating it into a system properly rather than disparate bits of kit is where we're looking toward. Absolutely, there's work around form factors and different approaches to things. I think we'll probably see a little bit more work around hot water before you see massive leaps in heat pump form and function, mainly because it's a key barrier to a lot of UK households today is where to put a hot water store. And if you're moving a combi boiler to a heat pump installation, you need to have a hot water cylinder. So we might see different form factors, different storage mediums, something different around the control philosophy and the connectivity of those products. So there's a bit of work going on there for sure.
Andy?
Yeah, I think it's funny, if you look at the heat pump industry in the UK at the moment, echoing what Jeff said about hot water, there has been a gap, and I think that's because often the way the Europeans will separate their heating systems from the hot water systems, not all the time, but we see that, and in the Asian markets we see the same thing. So actually what we've ended up having to do here is take existing sometimes technology and then force it onto a heat pump, as opposed to designing heat pump hot water cylinders for heat pumps. And I think the HHIC should be really proud, actually. The Hot Water Association is one of the first associations to put a domestic hot water cylinder with a heat pump test profile together and try and understand and help the industry understand how to build good hot water cylinders that work with heat pumps really well, as a try to kind of force a one design for a gas boiler in. And I think we're probably really unique in the UK to have R&D and eclectic R&D across different manufacturers who've been investing a lot of time in making sure that our cylinders can be changed and now revolutionized almost to work with heat pumps. So I guess that's one of a bit of a quick win for the HHIC, HW and UK manufacturing, because we are starting to make really good hot water cylinders that work with heat pumps. I think what Jeff said about making the product easy to use and easy to install is another really important thing for us. We control our heating systems in the UK in a way that most others don't. We love a control on a wall, and we love individual control. We love loads of zones, whereas traditionally with heat pumps, they heat the whole house rather than your bedroom and your study. So understanding and ensuring that our controls, as we develop heat pumps, work with controls, and I guess also helping our customers and our end users understand actually you don't have to start and stop your heating system. You can have continue low level heat, and it won't cost you the earth, as well as understand how energy moves in and around a house. For consumers, is really important. But without them having to know everything, and without asking our plumbers to become electrical engineers overnight, us making products that integrate really easily into existing houses and new homes is really important. And I think actually, Jeff mentioned the average SCOP for heat pumps is now 3. We've seen that move up from, it was 2.8, wasn't it, Jeff? I think it's now moved to 3, and hopefully as we're learning and teaching our engineers and our installers on the best way of installing heat pump systems, we'll see that rise again. And a lot of our heat pumps represent a lot higher figures than that, or efficiency figures from that in the field. So I think, so I guess those are kind of the main things that I would aim at.
Good request. Mark, finally on this one.
Yeah, as I said in the introduction, I've been around this industry a long time. 42. I've just realised it's actually almost a third of the 150th anniversary that we're celebrating. Frightening, really.
I've been born for 42 years.
I saw that with a wry smile at the start, and I've seen a lot in that time. I came in on the sort of back end of conversion and worked on appliances with big red ends on them that have been converted from town gas to nat gas. I've worked through the evolution to high efficiency condensing boilers. And at each stage, we sort of went from floor standing town gas boiler, back boiler, to a smarter, modern wall hung nat gas boiler, into clever solutions with fluing and condensate drains with the sort of 2005 condensing market. So I think if we have clear policy, if we have stable policy, if we have a clear direction, industry will develop solutions that are customer led and provide simple ways to install the product. We will also look to Europe. The building stock is different across each of the European countries. Jeff mentioned the Netherlands just now. Historically, they've always fitted their boilers up in the attic, vertical flue straight through the roof, but very short flue runs, whereas theirs traditionally have been in the kitchen. So we've got different and disparate requirements there. I'm sure there'll be clever things that come out of the Netherlands and other European countries that we will go, with a little bit of an adaptation, that will be perfectly suitable for the UK. That's how the rest of the heating industry has evolved from, the days that Murdoch first put a flame to a piece of coal gas or a jar of coal gas and invented the industry. So we'll find. Say again.
Were you before my time?
No, that was just before me. Just before me. So I think we will find ways, but we'll be customer led. We'll come up with simple solutions. Hot water controls and connectivity, as Jeff and Andy have said, are going to be the primary focuses, and then other ways to sort of make the product easier to install and the installation process more efficient and streamlined.
Excellent. Thanks very much. Well, we're near the end. I've one of my final questions, which is an elephant in the room question, which I always like to leave with, and then if you could just summarize yourselves. But the question from the panel, from the Q&A, and again, like the clean heat market mechanism, I knew there would be one around this. To what extent do the panel agree with the suggestion that funding the programme of R&D around hydrogen for heat is suppressing consumer demand for heat pumps today? Andy, what's your...
I'll take hydrogen. Yeah. Okay. So combustion of any sort is something that all of our companies are investing in and continuously do. So when it comes to making hydrogen boilers, that is something that we've all done and we all do. We all can do. It's not an issue. But obviously, there's a lot of infrastructure that comes with hydrogen that I think government really needs to take a decision on whether they want to move the country that way or not. But when it comes to the innovation of hydrogen, I'd say potentially have we seen people not adopt heat pumps because they might wait for hydrogen because it's been potentially misconstrued as coming sooner than it's ever going to? Potentially. That may be something that's happened, but I would suggest it's probably not a massive. I mean, this is obviously my personal view. I'd suggest that that's not a massive reason why we haven't seen adoption of other low carbon technologies. I think it's important that as British manufacturers and innovators, we keep an eye on tomorrow, whether that's heat pumps, whether that's potentially hydrogen in the future, whether that's direct electric, whatever that looks like. I think that we as manufacturers, it's important that our engineers are working on technologies of tomorrow. And I don't think we should shy away from that. But I think probably going back to everything we've said, making sure policy is consistent from government, making sure we know where they're going to invest the money is a good thing. And backing heat pumps is a really good product to back because it's here, it's available, and it's mass market everywhere. But
yes, yeah. Thanks, Mark. Anything to add there?
Yeah, heat pumps are the here and now. Electrification in domestic residential applications will be the lead technology. The lead energy vector. What the technology is to meet the electrification, well, heat pumps will be part of that, and I'm sure any other form of electrical heating will as well. Hydrogen does have a role to play in the UK. Its role will predominantly be in heavy transport, moving the trucks and things around the country. Industry, decarbonisation of industry, because there are a number of high temperature processes or very energy intense processes and the like in industry that would need a burnt fuel. So hydrogen is an opportunity there. Home heating, I'm not going to be around for another 42 years, and I'm not going to see mass conversions in my lifetime. It may come in regional clusters within the sort of the industrial zones that I spoke of with the decarbonisation of the industrial processes. However, as Andy rightly said, R&D takes an awful long time, and from a pure boiler manufacturer's point of view, we've had to invest in that because if a decision was taken, and we should have had a decision in 24, the first one, I think, if a decision had been taken then, time would have gone and we wouldn't have been able to cope. As it was, that decision has been delayed, and now we're told we should get a strategic decision in 26. Nothing really happening before the end of the decade if it is decided upon, but still R&D has to be done now to achieve those times. So from a manufacturer's point of view, it was right for us to invest in the R&D. Industry is looking at hydrogen for a wide range of uses where heat pumps won't come in. As I say, transport, energy intense industry, and there could be any other range of technologies that we've invested R&D in over the years that doesn't have such an outcry, that have never come to market. Zeolite crystals being one. We looked at that many years ago, and it never came to market, but it was worth a go at the time.
Great idea.
Yes. Jeff.
Points that the guys have made, really. So effectively, we were asked by government a ways back now, can you develop a hydrogen boiler? We need one. What are our future objectives? So that's the entire reason we're involved in it. Again, that being a responsible manufacturer and seeing what's happening across Europe as well, we have to cover our options and make sure that we've got kit ready to go as and when policy dictates. So we've been and done that. I think the narrative that's being constructed that people aren't necessarily that quick on the uptake of heat pumps because hydrogen might be coming doesn't really hold water. I think that's being a little bit disingenuous in my view. And heat pumps here and now today, you can walk into a plumber's merchant and get one. So there's no barrier to uptake put forward by hydrogen at all. It's a case of, future options. Mark said, we're not going to see this stuff mainstream until well into the next decade.
Yeah.
So, and that's pending a positive decision in 26.
Thanks, Jeff. And as it was said, heat pumps are the here and now, aren't they? That's what we're delivering. That's what we're trying to accelerate. And yeah, let's hope it happens. So, final question, and then I'll just ask you to summarise after you've answered this one. And as I said, it's a bit of an elephant in the room. You've kind of addressed it already, but many homes in the UK have no room for hot water cylinders that are required for air-to-water heat pumps. And that could be a conversation stopper for when you walk in someone's home. What should be done in a positive fashion to address the issue? Mark?
It is a difficult one, and there will be a proportion of homes that are, I think the official vogue term is complex decarbonise, which genuinely may have no space for a cylinder. In other cases, it may be a tad difficult, which deters people. You can put hot water cylinders in lofts. You can put hot water cylinders in garages. They are well insulated. You may need additional measures. We have slimline cylinders these days that will go up through a loft hatch, that will go into a width-wise smaller area. In the EU, we see horizontal cylinders as well, so they don't necessarily need to go in the airing cupboard. That way, they can go other way. So, I think there's any number of options with the cylinder. It does take a bit of a challenge to overcome to site one. You have to explain to the consumer what you've got to do. We'll also, I think, in time see a growth of new and alternate technologies. So thermal storage is potentially a different way of working. That's effectively switching the cylinder around and running a coil of cold water through a tank of hot water as opposed to the other way. So that would mean you could get away with smaller vessels. Phase change materials, thermal batteries. I don't want advertising people, but there are organisations out there already that have alternate technologies that could work with or do work with heat pumps. And as I said earlier to one of the other questions, industry will find clever, innovative and simple to install solutions once we reach that critical mass, and we're at that sort of tipping point now. So there are ways to find hot water solutions. It could as well be that we follow Europe. And in many cases in Europe, we're a German company, and a lot of German companies have point of use electric water heating under every sink or adjacent to the bath, electric showers and the like. So there are different ways of doing it. It's a mindset change.
Yeah, thanks, Mark. Jeff?
So we've touched on hybrids already. That's a partial answer to the question. I think it's important that we see the future home standard come through. So that will mean that new homes are developed and designed with essentially a low carbon or a heat pump system in mind. So that will force developers to put cylinder cupboards back in. So we've seen over the last 20 years or so, effectively cylinder cupboards being designed out. So that leaves us with this tranche of difficult to decarbonise housing in that respect. There's no space for a cylinder. But as Mark said, I mentioned it earlier that we're looking at alternative storage mediums and different ways of doing things. The problem we're going to see with that, though, is production of a hot water cylinder is relatively cost effective, and we can come to market at a pretty low price point. To get any of the alternatives, if we're looking at phase change or something like that, very big challenge to get that to a decent price point.
Thanks. And Andy?
Yeah, I'd echo everyone. I actually really like hot water cylinder. Even though for one of the biggest combi boiler manufacturers, I also like a combi boiler. But I think I like hot water cylinder, and I think Jeff's right and Mark's right as well. I guess it's, can we store our clothes or our towels in a different location? Is that something we can do? And I think as consumers, we're going to get used to it with new builds starting to have hot water cylinders. I think hot water cylinders can be smaller. We can put them in different locations. And I guess it's how precious are we? But hot water cylinders offer a really, really good hot water comfort level. They're really good, and often better than electric shower alternatives. So I actually think it might be a bonus to a lot of people, and they might be, if they can find the space and move their towels and the sheets into a different cupboard, and put the hot water cylinder back to where they used to be. I actually think people might be really positively surprised by the comfort level and the output they get from a hot water cylinder, which is heated by a heat pump. I think they really will be. So while it might be perceived as a negative because we've got to move our sheets, in reality, I think it will improve, at least equal the comfort level of hot water that we've all got to know at the moment. So I think it may not be a negative.
No, I don't think it is. Big up the hot water cylinder. That's what I say.
Yeah.
So, more power. Whoop, whoop. Mark.
Summary of the hot water side. I think there are good opportunities, but it might be a tad difficult in some properties.
Yeah.
But,
Yeah. So just a quick summary, and I'm always curious to know, because let's do it by time of service. So I'll come to you, Mark. Just a quick summary, and if you had your Christmas ball or your wish list, where do you think, or where could we be in 5 years?
I've seen a lot of change in the time I've been within the industry. And I will say to anybody at the moment, this is possibly the most exciting of all the changes that I've seen. Wide uptake of heating was one. A bit of a change. Condensing boilers, quite a step change. This is several step changes.
Yes.
So it is a very, very exciting time to be in the industry. I would advocate this industry as a great one for anybody thinking about a practical role when they leave school or college, as a good opportunity for the future. Heat pumps are the here and now.
Yeah.
What other technologies come along in a few years' time, I don't know, and that is crystal ball gazing. But heat pumps are definitely here and now. We need action from government and industry together. And it really comes back to making sure that we've got the right supporting mechanisms and processes in place for businesses to grow and the green supply chain to develop, for homeowners, so that we've got the education, the information systems, that we've got the funding and fiscal incentives. And you don't build an industry on funding. That's a short-term kickstart. But it is to reach that sort of critical mass, that we make planning easy. We didn't mention planning about the 100-day point earlier on. We've got to change some of the planning issues, so we make it easy for the homeowner to get their heat pump installed, spark spread, and the like, and we make it easy for the installer to transition and to work in this area. That will give a positive environment for the market to grow. In 5 years' time, where could we be? What does that take us to? 2029.
Yeah.
I think we could be pretty much on the way to the 600,000 heat pumps by then.
Yeah. Excellent. Jeff, second
longest served. I was looking at all this grey on the screen. This isn't good.
It doesn't show up on the camera so much.
I cut mine off, Jeff, just for that reason.
Clear and stable policy. So I think perhaps there's a need to revisit the heating building strategy, but actually put in the work behind the scenes to actually deliver, rather than just putting a paper out and saying, isn't this wonderful? So we've talked already about the need for joined up thinking across all the different tenures of housing and commercial buildings and such, and there's making sure we've got a supportive framework that works for everybody. I think Mark's right, with the right changes, with the right level of emphasis, we'll get to that 600,000, perhaps not by 28, might be 29, might be 30, but we'll get there. And again, heat network zoning is something we've not touched on, but again, that's a potential to start coming up into regions from 2025. Again, that's going to need some work to embed and properly get across the line. So I think, without labouring the point, and that's a very poor pun with the new government as well, but there's work to do. And again, this sort of need for a long-term roadmap that we can actually invest against, given our R&D timelines, and horizons are pretty distant. So, one of the key questions our group board will ask to me is, okay, what is the new government going to do, and how can we invest X million euros in achieving that? And that's something that will pay off in 3, 4, 5 years' time. It's not tomorrow, so we need that longer-term trajectory to do that.
Yeah, thanks very much, Jeff. Andy, finally, yeah,
this is the youngest member of this group. I think what would I like the industry to look like in 5 years? Being the heat pump guy at Ideal, and representing quite a lot of heat pump people here and across the industry. I think we want to build a proper heat pump business, as everyone does here, and that's what we've done in Europe. I think as soon as we try and force the issue, whether through policy or through we start to create instability, and we know this technology is good, and we know it is stable, and we know people choose it around the world. And so if they're not choosing it here, maybe it's not the technology. And so what I would really like is, like we talked about, a really good roadmap in regards to what it looks like for boilers and what it looks like for heat pumps and other technologies. And I think people will be willing to trust both consumers, the government, and that, as well as manufacturers. We can build great products and continue to do that. But I think that roadmap for tomorrow is really important, because there has been back and forth on technology, and where the government's been willing to go on policy based on who's been in number 10. And I think that does create a suspicion amongst our consumers that, is this going to be another fad? Is this going to be another thing from the 80s and 90s? I think a really good policy that says this technology works, and we're going to help you choose it, not be forced to have it, is a really good thing. And I think that would be really good. I think continued involvement in training. I would love for all of our engineers, as they are actually a lot of our service engineers, but all of our customers, our installers, to be really comfortable fitting a heat pump or a boiler, and not have that nervous start that they used to have when they were fitting boilers, but be really comfortable with heat pumps. And that only comes from consumer demand. So I would love if not just my mum, but my mum's friend also wants to have a heat pump, because it makes sense. And I think if the industry, if the government works with the industry to do that, that'll be really good. And I guess on the policy side, whether it's HHIC, whether it's Hotwater Association, whether it's even the Heat Pump Association and others, whether it's BEMA, we as manufacturers are really want to help make these decisions really good ones. And so listening and helping our industry be part of the conversation, I think is really important, because that enables us to grow together and hopefully not make any mistakes. So yeah, that's where I hope we'll be in 5 years.
No, thanks very much. Thanks, everybody. Our time's up, and spot on, by the way. For me, what's coming across is a certainty. More than anything, that's clear from the three of you. But what's equally clear is the importance of the training, and we can get there within the training. But I think I'm going to steal your point, Mark, as heat pumps are the here and now. That's the one. Andy, we can't force on people, as you said, but there's certainly the here and now. And there's a genuine interest, isn't there? And I think it's down to us as industry to capitalise on that industry and continue the march and make it grow. So finally, thanks, Jeff, Mark, Andy, for your time. Much appreciated. And speak soon. Thanks, everybody.
Pleasure.
Take care. Bye-bye.
Thanks, Jeff.